Loving the chat coming in, loving the music. Thank you everyone for joining us in time.
Oh, I can't spell my name.
Leslie, I think your name is already correctly written, so all
Yes,
sorted.
I'm just going into the chat and I'm putting my email ID there in case anybody has any questions after the session, Let's see.
Ajay, is that Chaurasia on the flute?
Could be potentially unfamiliar, but could be. So I'll put the music on the chat later on, and I will give it a pause for now. And yes, officially, warmly welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today in the community of practice of social emotional learning with Global Schools Forum and with Think Equal. Leslie, thank you so much for joining and accepting the invitation. We've heard you before for a few minutes, and today we're just very, very, very looking forward to hear you for the whole 90 minutes and have a wonderful, candid dialogue, because communities of practice have begun many years back since GSF started, and we started as a community of 7 to 10 organizations, now 230 organizations across 72 countries with all of your support. It's just been incredible how these communities of practice also have grown with that. These are spaces to spotlight, share those voices. We've heard so many times that even just by knowing that some other person in some other part of the world exists, who's doing and working and stressing about the similar challenges we are thinking in this part of the planet, that in itself is a relief and a feeling of camaraderie. So with that, it's just been incredible leading this community of practice as well. My name is Ajay Pinjani. I'm part of the Global Schools Forum. It's been almost 4 years leading different communities of practice at the Global Schools Forum. So yeah, really excited. I'll share a few things. Uh, for those who are unfamiliar with the Global Schools Forum, we started and continue to support non-state education organizations, schools, school networks, education support organizations who are working in underserved communities, with underserved communities, to understand, to strengthen what can quality learning look like? What does it mean to have? We really believe in asking those bold questions, which, like Leslie asks, understanding that the SEL should not be on the sidelines. What does it really mean when education is sometimes on the sidelines? And really trying to understand on four pillars. One is our community, which is the strength and the formidable pillar in the know-how. How can we share knowledge better and create repositories where we can understand what works in different contexts? How can we strengthen funding and access to funding and opportunities to funding through connections, through know-how, and through just building those spaces where you can connect with each other? And fourth is, how can we build partnerships? Because what we are trying to achieve, or what we are trying to navigate together, is impossible to be done by even one big massive organization like Think Equal or the Citizen Foundation or Khan Examiner Education Board or any other. We need much more than multilaterals, but we need partnership across organizations and across contexts. So we are building courses around that and much more to look forward to later on that. But you can certainly see on the website or reach out to me or anyone in the GSF team to learn more about the Global Schools Forum. What we look forward to today is starting with a check-in, understanding where you are, how are you feeling. Thank you for putting it on the chat already. Our journey so far, this is in continuation. We've led 5 sessions of this community of practice, led by 5 wonderful organizations. This is the 6th, and we would be keen to know how best to continue this, because a community of practice is designed with the community in mind and the community at heart. So however we feel this needs to go ahead, we will take it forward. What are the patterns emerging so far? And with those patterns, we've challenged Think Equal to, respond to those from their experience across a massive scale of 41 countries today. Then we'll share a bit about Leslie, when less words are required because she's already very familiar to many of us here. And then we'll also invite a community dialogue, because these communities of practice are incomplete without the dialogue and understanding the context where you all are based. So it's really important to help you go into maybe breakout rooms, share a bit about what echoes within your context. So while you're listening to Leslie and Think Equal and running through this community of practice, constantly think about maybe, or it's a natural reflection, what echoes within your context. And we'll take up that question later on when we go into groups, and we would love for you to share the feedback. Um, a few thoughts which have really worked throughout our communities of practice is it's very difficult to give undivided attention today because we are demanded everywhere. But if we can give that, I think that journey has always been very beautiful, because what we have is the moment right now, and we ask for that moment fully from you so that we can make that moment beautiful with you. So your openness has always created magic, and we are really grateful for your presence. Before I share a bit ahead, I would love to know what's in this moment, acting as a goose, not maybe silly, but just act a goose. I couldn't remove the word silly from the picture. So acting as a goose, how are you feeling today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. You can put it on chat. We can hear a few voices as well. You're seeing threes come up. Ah, I love the threes. There's an 8, an excited bunch. There's a 5 and a 2. Wow, 7. I think all are so cute and sweet. If anyone wants to share, this is a good point to share. What is behind that 2, 3, that number you're putting in?
I don't mind sharing, but I'd like others to share first, because you're going to be hearing enough of me on this session. So if anyone else wants to share, I'd prefer them to start, and then I don't mind sharing if we have time.
Yeah.
Can I start then?
Yes,
Please.
Pat.
I did number 8. It was absolutely, how do I say, free spirit and just going in your own little world and enjoying it and loving it. That's me. I am a free spirit. So yes.
Brilliant. And you are indeed, Pat. Wonderful.
I think you know that.
I know that. Anybody else?
I can go next. I put 7 because I'm in the UK right now and the duck is on some water, and I would very much like to be in some water right now. So that's my thinking.
You've got a
Water is much needed today, Alessandro, in the UK.
I'm happy to just quickly mention I'm an 8. I think, well, it's the end of the day. I'm in Australia, so it's actually evening, 9 in the evening. It's I guess for me it's early childhood can be exhausting, and we're always trying to make change. But at the end of the day, we get up the next day and we continue on. So quite opposite to Pat.
So that's you after a day's work, you mean? After that.
After a day's work, that is, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Maybe Leslie, you can share, and then we'll take it ahead.
So my 2, I mean, that goose to me looks both nervous and excited. We all, of course, put our own feelings onto images. And that describes me right now, because I know the degree to which conversations like this and communities like this and the coming together to look at those 2 pillars of GSF, which, by the way, is the most inclusive, warm, supportive, enabling, empowering organization, as you know, in the world. And it's rare to have Goal 17, Partnership for the Goals, so much in the forefront of the objectives and goals of organizations today. But this community has that, and it's so special. And I know the communication of that goose with his wide open beak, ready to, communicate, is so key to moving our work on. The number of achievements, partnerships, work that has been engendered by conversations like this, I've experienced at first hand for 9 years. I'm sure you have too. And that really describes my excitement for that.
Thank you so much, Leslie. We are also really, really excited to share that the Learning Festival is coming up again in just few weeks. I'll put things on the chat. You can go through it. It is for members only. It is an exclusive event which we create for members. But again, our members are 230 organizations and we share takeaways later on overall. We had Leslie speak last time and that had blown people away. I'll put that link as well where you can hear later on. You'll hear a lot from Leslie today, but you can hear that 8-minute story Leslie had shared, that when she failed and what that fueled. And that was tremendously powerful. And so Learning Festival is really an exciting place where we bring our community together and we don't talk about FLN, ECD, SEL, secondary, climate, but we talk about the behind. What does trust feel like? When does trust fail? How does it garner again? What happens? Who do you trust in the process? The communities, the partnerships, the people, your own team, yourself, energy, nature. So a lot on that. I'll put a bit down, and then if we have time at the end, I'll share a glimpse into what's coming. So whoever is not registered from the community will highly encourage you to register. If you're not part of the GSF community, but you're part here, we feel like it, please join GSF as well. We're more than welcome to approach me or anyone in the GSF team, and then we'll share more later on. So in this community of practice, from the beginning, we started in January because one of the needs which came up, aside from many other needs from the community, was how do we integrate social-emotional learning? How do we not keep it on the sidelines? Who's part of social-emotional learning? Who are the organizations who are actively leading this within our community? And that's where we started with Labhya, organize this community of practice. Really grateful to Labhya to help us really begin the thinking work around it. We had our annual meeting, we launched a program over there and launched this community of practice. Since January, we had Labhya, Kizazi, Learn to Play, Justice Rising, Transcend. Some of you are already here in this room right now. And this incredible amount of the diverse conversations we've had so far on social-emotional learning and some key learnings which have emerged and thereby some key questions which have emerged are around teachers feel it first. So we often talk about children and we should, but we cannot stress enough that teachers are the ones who are really leading this work. And what about their social emotional learning? What about their spaces of nurture and safety and care? And how can we make sure that those are provided? Routines, not periods. We've always talked about how to fit things in the curriculum, but SEL and many other aspects around it are completely about consistency, repetition, routines. How can we bring those routines and repetition in it and trust the time and energy and observe it so that it can build over time? Frameworks are essential and helpful, but frameworks alone by themselves are not good enough. And how can we make them accessible and alive in different contexts? Of course, there was much more learnings and many more questions which come. If something echoes within your context right away, do put it on chat as well simultaneously. But some of the questions which really came up, and if we think about the 4 major questions which have come over these 6 sessions through dialogue, has been how do we navigate limited funding currently available? It seems like we are going into buckets and corners of separately for FLN, separately for SEL. Can education come together and think about funding together so that the funders are also demanded together? But who are the funders who can be brought into this conversation so that these programs can be seen holistically over time? How do we measure impact meaningfully? We know that many of the times when we talk about SEL, a lot of abstractness also comes into, but those abstractness is so important and that keeps it alive. So we know the importance of it, but how do we communicate the effectiveness and the importance of it so that those sustained programs also are well funded, but also well observed and evaluated as well? How do we support teachers who themselves are carrying their own challenges, their own traumas, their own social emotional related care, support elements, which maybe have been completely under-addressed? And how do we integrate SEL, not as a period, but across subjects, within subjects, so that it is not treated as a standalone? So we challenged and asked Leslie and the team to, okay, can we respond to this? Because you've had experience across 40 plus countries. working with the government, working with funders. What does it feel like? What does that journey look like? So without further ado, really warm welcome to Leslie once again. Leslie's journey has been tremendously incredible and very unconventional. I will let her speak about it, but these few words written over here anyway speak a lot about it. And if you've met her or interacted with her or have seen her speak or just seen her picture, you'll see the enthusiasm and the passion she carries and the energy she carries regardless of wherever she is, she will always continue to build that momentum of working and holding accountability as well. And I'm sure the curiosity will come. Why 0 to 4 years only? How did it start? How 3 to 5 years? And how so many countries really began into it when the statement began SEL cannot be optional. So thank you so much, Leslie, for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Handing it over to you.
How wonderful. It's really, really so thrilling to be here. And I just, I hear words like you've just spoken so eloquently and generously, Ajay. And it always feels like it has to be someone else you're speaking about because, I've never felt that I've made a good choice or that I should in some way be thanked for what I'm doing. This is a compulsion. If I don't do this every minute I have spare in my day, I will just not die satisfied. This is the most important work there is in the world. And we have neglected our children across the world so irresponsibly, so much to our detriment, shooting ourselves royally in the foot. And things are getting worse and worse. The polycrises are not improving, they are compounding. It's never been more urgent, I think. And we on this call know how easy it is, how inexpensive, how easy it is to actually achieve mindset change, which is the only thing that is going to move the needle on our world. Without mindset change, we are chasing our tails. We are doing Einstein's definition of madness, keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So for me, there is no more important job in the entire world than a teacher's job because they are architecting the next generation. What can be more important than that? And therefore, there is no greater endeavor or effort or enterprise that I am compelled to put my efforts to. Now, I'm going to briefly, and I apologize to those who already know this story, but I know there are many of you here today who we haven't met yet. And I think it is important always to just know what is the DNA of an organization? Where did it come from, this compulsion that I've just spoken of? Well, I used to be a filmmaker until about 12 years ago. And the very last film I made, and the last film that I shall ever make, is a film called India's Daughter. I have a trailer in the slide deck, and I'm going to show it to you for those who don't know the film. And anyone here who wants a link to the film, just put it in the chat. I'll send you a link. It is full of extraordinary insights. In December 2012, many of you will remember, there was a horrific, brutal gang rape of a young girl on a moving bus in Delhi, in India. Could have happened anywhere in the world. Gender-based violence is endemic to every single country in the world. Happened to happen, this case there, and I was moved to go there and do something about it, make a film about it, because the response to that brutal, vicious gang rape, in which the girl was not only raped, but what these men did to her after the rape left her almost dead, and 7 days later she did die. And the response to that in India was so extraordinary. Millions of people flooding out onto the streets for more than 1 month. I had never seen in any country in the world so much commitment and passion to say, we will not have this anymore. It's enough. And that moved me to say, well, I have to go and, make my efforts in the way that I can and with what talent and skill I have to amplify these voices of those protesters who I had fallen in love with. So I go to India, and almost as soon as my feet hit the ground, I think, this is just ridiculous. What do I think I'm going to achieve here? I'm going to make a film, yes, a campaigning film. And what's it going to lead to? More awareness. Oh, really? We need more awareness, do we, about gender-based violence? I just thought this is a complete waste of time. Pack your bags, go home to your little kids who are missing you and your husband. And then I got seized with an idea that would not leave me alone. And the idea was that if only I could persuade the Director General of Tihar Jail, the prison that these gang rapists and murderers were incarcerated in, to allow me in with my cameras and interview these men, then it would be worthwhile staying and making this film. Why? Because if we don't understand these acts of violence and who they are emanating from, what psyches, who are these human beings who can do this to another human being? If we don't understand that, how on earth are we ever going to change it? And I got permission. So I went and spent 31 hours over about 6 or 7 months interviewing the gang rapists and murderers of this young girl in their prison cells. And what I learned in there was so life-changing. It was so utterly extraordinary in terms of its insights, and it was complete reversals of expectations. So I thought I was going to meet monsters and psychopaths who have nothing to do with us, right? I'm sorry to tell you, not one of them was a monster or a psychopath, not even the one who had raped a 5-year-old girl, who was the very first interviewee I got. And not one of them felt any regret or remorse, but they were not monsters. They didn't feel remorse or regret because they didn't believe they needed to. They literally had been schooled, programmed like robots with algorithms put into their brains. You can do this, why not? The 5-year-old girl, she was a Dalit, she was from the lowest possible caste. Her rapist said to me, word for word, he said, she was a beggar girl. Her life was of no value. Her life was of no value, he said, word for word. The men on the bus who had gang raped the girl, she was out at night after dark, they told me. No good girl in India is out at night after dark. She was with a boy who wasn't her husband, her father, her brother. She was a slut. And they said word for word, she not only deserved what she got, we had a duty to teach her a lesson. Now, to round off all of the insights that I had in that room, I came to understand that far from having nothing to do with us, they have everything to do with us, because who has taught them to think as they think? We have. It's what we call culture. Culture has taught them to think as they think. And when you think as they thought, you can go on and do what they did. Why not? That is the problem we're grappling with. This is what I understood in those prison cells, so forcibly that I could not turn away from this. It's not the violence that is the disease. The violence is the symptom of the disease. But the disease itself is the discriminatory mindset that affords lesser or no value to another human being. And whether that is on the basis of their religion, their color, their economic background, their gender, their race, whatever it is, that is the problem. Mindset. And if we don't change mindset, we will change nothing in this world, not a thing. So those were my insights. And the final one, to bring an end to this introductory bit before we get to the slide deck and the details was that I looked at all these men and I knew what I needed to do was find the common thread between them. And the first thing that struck me was only one of them has finished secondary school. All the others, uneducated, left at 12, 13. And I thought, well, this is not a coincidence. The lack of education has to be a factor. And I remembered Nelson Mandela having said, education is the most powerful weapon we have to change the world. And I thought, yes, of course, I've just been sitting with these uneducated people, and that is the issue, or one of the issues for sure. And then I had a major problem on my hands. Because within 2 weeks, I'm now interviewing all the lawyers in the case who have had the highest possible degree of access to education as we know it. Education. That failed, broken system that we are peddling to our children since the Industrial Revolution, that is based in taking a child from a classroom to the labor market, that kind of education. The lawyers, in some cases, were worse than the rapists. One lawyer, well, you'll hear what he says in the trailer, actually. I'll leave him to speak for himself. But what I understood immediately was that Mandela, one of the most brilliant minds we have had in this world, couldn't possibly have been talking about the kind of education those lawyers had when he meant education changes the world. So he must have meant something else when he said education. So I rush onto Google and I look for Mandela education, and I find what I really believe Mandela's definition of education is. I am now going to go to our slide deck, and I'm going to play you a trailer. Sorry, I need to get to the top here. Yes. I'm going to play you a trailer, but before I do, I really do need to make a trigger warning. It's about 4 or 5 minutes long, this trailer, and please go and make a cup of coffee if you think that this is going to disturb or upset you. There's no violence depicted, but the ideas are violent. So if, trigger warning, I mean, God knows why we don't make a trigger warning before every single TV newscast that we watch. We're so keen on trigger warnings, but nonetheless, here I must make one, okay? And after that, we're going to come to Mandela's definition of education, and then the slide deck will begin. Oh, why is this not? Give me 1 second. Come on.
The first two who've been arrested produced in court this afternoon.
The girl is now on a ventilator, battling for life. Apart from Ram Singh and his brother Mukesh, who was driving the bus, 4 other men have been detained.
The juvenile accused among the 6 arrested for the gang rape and torture.
According to the latest government figures, 1 woman is now raped in India every 20 minutes.
लड़कियों के लिए बनाया गया घर काम काज अपना घर बार देखे ये सोना रात में डिस्को में घूम रही है बारों में घूम रही है लड़के भी उतने उससे ज्यादा जिम्मेदार है रेप के लिए ये लड़के हैं उससे ज्यादा
We have the best culture. In our culture, there is no place for a woman.
एक ही कलमदाना के मेरे बेटा को भगवान ने जब बुढ़ापा का सहारा बनया था हमने मजदूरियां कर कर क्यों ना बड़ा के दिखा मैं बुढ़ापा की लाठी थी सब संसार यही अपने बुढ़ापा के लिए करते नहीं उनको हमने देखा
So, you saw those statistics. How are we going to stop this? Only through mindset change. You heard those uneducated and those so-called educated. The way the world is educating our children is leading to this. It's not preventing it. And that is the issue, and that's what I understood in there. And here is what I believe is Nelson Mandela's definition of education, the sort that changes the world. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. And I swear that in the last 9 years, I have seen children learn to love. And I have seen children be transformed within 4 months of a program that is just directed, intentional, repeats, so that neuropathways are laid in the brain while the brain is being built that are pro-social, etc. Now, obviously, I was a filmmaker, as you know. I didn't know how to do network partners. I had to bring the experts around me because I was none. I did my research, of course, and look, I came across eloquent, beautiful statements like this from Article 29 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which every single nation state on earth has ratified. But only now, recently, have countries started to take this seriously. Hardly any of them have actually, when you consider the 200-odd countries in the world, hardly any of them have actually done anything about it, because we're very good about making pronouncements and declarations. We haven't been very good about walking the walk and taking the action. Education shall be directed to the development of the child's personality. Where are we doing this? Those boys didn't stand a chance. Horrific as the thing they did, we need to understand why they did it. Because from the moment they opened their eyes in the world, they were told, boys are boys, boys will be boys. Girls are for this, boys are for that, boys have needs, a boy is born, sweets are distributed. Well, of course, their mindset is going to be such that they feel entitled to do what they want to do. Okay, the experts, as I said, I had to bring together because I was not one. And from the fields of education, extraordinary thought leaders like Sir Ken Robinson, Barbara Isaacs, the president of Montessori Europe, and Sir Ken, I mean, I would categorically say the most brilliant educator that has ever walked our planet and sadly left it now. From the field of psychology, Dr. Mark Brackett, Dr. Robin Stern from the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. From the field of neuroscience, Professor Richard Davidson, one of the greatest neuroscientists we have in the world. From social justice and human rights, wonderful thought leaders like Dr. Urvashi Sani from Lucknow, who's an expert at empowering girls and boys through education of a certain kind, social emotional learning, education that addresses itself to the whole personality of the child. People like Sheila Wamahiyu from Kenya, who is an expert at value-based education. So an extraordinary committee of 22 experts. And essentially, you know already what we do, but it's worth just focusing on a few words in this slide. You know it's a mission. You know it's a movement, but it's also a program. That is critical to say, because it's one thing to have, as I said, declarations, intentional documents, curriculum frameworks. They are worthless. They are simply a little roadmap, but they are worthless when you think about how they're going to be actioned. If, as The so-called developed countries in the world, UK, US, Australia, they all say, they say we're doing it already. How are they doing it? Well, they're letting every teacher decide which tools to use, how to go about this. That is irresponsible because the children are not going to get what the children need. They have an inalienable right to grow up and not commit suicide and not suffer mental health disorders and not rape and not be raped, etc. That is their right to grow up with positive outcomes. And the only way to do that is to go in early. The neuroscientists are very clear. The time the brain is built, when mindsets are set, when habitual ways of responding and emotion regulation are carved in stone in the neuropathways of the brain foundationally. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that a human being can't after the age of 6, because they say that that age is 3 to 6. That's the window we have. And Think Equal only focuses on children 3 to 6. But that's because we are there to put in the foundations. Of course, this learning can and should and must go on beyond the age of 6. But if a child has only had the foundations, they will still have positive life outcomes, whether they continue to learn this subject or not. If they started after 6, it's not going to work unless you bring in an army of psychologists, trillions of dollars, unlearn what they've learned, and have them relearn it after the period of the absorbent brain. That's what we believe, religiously almost. Global system change. It's got to be a system change, and it has to be at scale. And that very much informed the design of this program, which is based around prescriptive lesson plans. There was a study in New Zealand called the Dunedin study, which proves that use of lesson plans prescriptively, step-by-step instructions, is incredibly effective. And that is the design we have adopted here because, I started off by saying teachers are the single most important job we have in the entire world. But look at the disconnect. They're undervalued, underpaid, underrespected, undertrained in early childhood. I mean, they're assumed to be babysitters. Early childhood, the UK curriculum says, is a time to play. No, it's a time the brain is built and the rest of life will result. The next 80 years have everything to do with how the first 5 actually are built. Okay, so it has to be a system change, which is why we will only do projects where we can work with governments and go in at scale. The rest of this slide. So I'm going to start picking up the pace because I talk a lot. Now, there are a number of graphs here, and I'm going to zip through them. Do you see the pink line and the dark blue line that takes the same sort of trajectory as that graph line? Habitual ways of responding, emotional control. Look, they flatline around 6 or 7. And what flatlining effectively means, these are graphs, by the way, from the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. What this effectively means is that, those are the 2 lines I was referring to, it takes more effort. So this is another expression of the same graph I just showed you. The amount of effort that is required, and the curve starts going up pretty early. Here is another expression of it. The brain's architecture. At birth, at age 6, look how dense. Children are firing at full throttle. At this age, by age 14, it's all pared down. Life choices are made. Do you have empathetic neuropathways laid in your brain early, or do you not? If you don't, you won't have empathy for the rest of your life. End of story. Think Equal teaches 25 competencies and skills. Very often, we hear the emphasis going on the word emotional, social and emotional learning. Yes, of course, emotional intelligence is incredibly important. Two legs of it, emotional literacy, which we teach, and emotion regulation. But the bottom line is social intelligence, relationship building, critical thinking, self-esteem, empathy, gender equality, racial equality, peaceful conflict resolution, being an advocate for others, environmental awareness. All of this is crucial, critical, if we're going to build pro-social human beings for a world that is loving, that is kind, inclusive, and ultimately peaceful. So this is how we do it, with concrete, tangible tools put into the hands of the teacher. Because if we don't operationalize that curriculum framework that the government gives them and says, give me by the end of this year a child who is self-aware, cooperative, a critical thinker, how on earth do they know how to help build such children? They've never learned this subject. They've not been trained in social emotional learning. And if you have these so-called developed countries with their so-called sophisticated curricula of education saying that every teacher must choose their own way, their own materials, really? You want several thousands or hundreds of thousands of different ways of teaching a child how to be equal, inclusive, kind? I don't think so. There is a framing question of think equal, and this is maybe the most important thing I'm going to be saying on this webinar, and that is one that I ask policymakers, education ministers, sometimes presidents. I sometimes manage to get to sit. I've sat recently with the president of Botswana. Let me tell you, he's the next Mandela. The man is mind-blowingly enlightened, a visionary, brilliant. Boko Duma is his name. Watch out for him. He's amazing. The question I ask of all of them is this: Your Excellency or Honorable Minister, whoever it is, right? I know you take seriously your duty of care to our youngest, our most vulnerable citizens, our children. So please help me understand, how on earth can you mandate numeracy, mandate literacy, but leave it as optional for our children to learn how to value another human being? Leave it as optional for our children to learn how to value themselves or lead healthy relationships. This cannot be optional. And if you are sacrificing on, in terms of these so-called developed countries I keep on complaining about, if you are going to sacrifice on the altar of freedom of choice the rights of our children to have positive outcomes in their lives, you end up with the kind of societies we have. And that's not good enough. We have 4 age-appropriate levels. Sorry, I need to go back to the structure. Up, there we go. Each level age-appropriate to the age of the child. And then we have a level 4, which is for refugee communities, crisis settings, war zones. 3 ingredients in this recipe, this vaccination against discrimination, inequality. The books, the narrative picture books, I know as a former filmmaker that narrative and character is the best vehicle through which to experientially teach empathy. And at this age, we want the children to be experiencing it, not to be just directed to think about it. We can't just wag a finger and say, put yourself in that person's shoes, because that is just a vainglorious, theoretical question, right? Or act if they can imagine it. But take them through a story. Diego's great idea in the bottom right-hand corner there of the books. Have them experience what Amina, the girl in the wheelchair, is feeling when the tears are rolling down her cheeks and she sees those children playing and she can't join them. And nobody's asking her to join them. We're squeezing their little hearts. And they cry in Think Equal classrooms. Brilliant, because they are exercising empathy. They are learning how to feel for another human being. And this happens, of course, through all the stories and in repetition, etc. The narrative picture books, almost one a week, 90 lesson plans, 3 a week for 30 weeks, and every lesson plan prescriptive. And we explain to the teachers, we're not trying to patronize you. It's not that we don't think you can write lesson plans, of course you can. But number one, we need this to be even-handed because it's a global program. It's in all countries that we have to reach. Therefore, every child should get the same quantum, the same dose of the vaccination. And also, because you haven't learned it, you need to train in it. And the best way to train for a year or two is just to follow these instructions. You're training while you teach the children. So we give them just 2 days of training or 16 20-minute modules online, if they are connected online, and they're ready to train in the classroom by following the instructions. And the children are transformed within 4 months, honestly. Then we have resources that go along with those lessons. And the lessons are 30 weeks, 3 times a week. Okay. This is just a look, and we can't go into detail at this, but pretty standard lesson plans with objectives, vocabulary, resources, and then the gold dust, which is the action, the step-by-step. Read this book, now ask them this, now lead them to think about this question, and it's always active. It's always the children coming with the information, the teacher's leading, but it's not putting information into children's heads, obviously. Faisal is Not Himself is a book about teaching our children, our boys in particular, that it's strong to cry. It's not a weakness. And it's the father who tells him that. So, we're everything is thought through. Everything is directed and effortful and intentional. So we're giving a male role model who is saying, crying is healthy. We all cry. It's okay to be sad. There's nothing wrong with sadness. There's nothing wrong with anger. All feelings are okay. They're either high energy or they're low energy. They're either high pleasantness or they're low pleasantness. This is just a closer look at the mood meter, which is best practice tool from Yale. And then on the right is the Take a Break, Make a Plan poster, which is about emotion regulation, which Think Equal created. Here is just another example of a tool, and this is to mediate racial equality. In this set of portraits, it's by a brilliant artist called Angelica Das, who makes massive billboards of, hundreds of such portraits of human beings. And what we teach them very simply with the evidence of their own eyes is when the teacher asks them about the girl in the top left-hand corner, that blonde girl, similar color perhaps to me, a bit lighter than me, teacher says, what color is she? And the children will, of course, say white because that's what they've been taught. The teacher then holds up a white piece of paper and says, and to the picture and says, but isn't this white? Yes, this is white. But so if this is white, how can she be white? Because aren't these different colors? Well, of course they are. And then the little girl in the middle, they say is black. And the teacher says, well, wait a minute. If that girl is black, what color's her hair then? Well, her hair is black. Yes, of course it's black, but her skin isn't black. So now we realize with one brown crayon, which also comes in this 5.5 kilogram pack that goes to every teacher and to every classroom, making a very light brown circle and a very dark brown circle. Every human being on earth is brown, for God's sake. Ever heard of melanin? The kids learn about that because we're either dark brown or we're light brown, but we're one brown family, etc. Now, I'm going to really start motoring through this because I'm aware of time and I desperately want conversations to happen. So, home kits we have for the parents, 5 10-minute activities we send home every week. They're based in the classroom learning. It's not that we believe we can change the parents. Sad to say we can't. But engaging them, There have been tests and there's evidence that engaging parents in learning adds 4 months worth of impact. So we do it. This is one of my favorite slides, and I'll zip through it though. This is our theory of change on an individual level. We take children and meet them exactly where they're at, whether they are traumatized, whether they've had adverse childhood experiences, whether they're well-adjusted, dysfunctional, neurotypical or not, whether they have additional needs. Every child has special and additional needs, right? We meet every child where they're at, and we embrace that child in a Think Equal classroom. And through the 25 competencies and skills that you see here in this arrow, and through the new narratives and hopeful endings which we have created for the purpose, we're creating in that classroom a microcosm of the society we want, a new, hopeful, collective narrative. This, of course, is our other theory of change, which is much more complex. And, you know, if anyone's interested, of course, I'll send it on. But of course, our ultimate goal is a system change in education that brings this missing dimension to education front and center, alongside numeracy and literacy. An anxious child learns nothing. So I would argue that this subject is even more important in the early years, when the change can be made, than numeracy or literacy. There's always time to learn to read, write, and count. This is where we are in the world. We're in 42 countries today. In 14 of them, we are at full saturation with memorandums of agreement signed with governments who have undertaken to implement this at full saturation, embed it in their pre-service training, embed it in their national curriculum, in their timetable. So we have effectively changed the education system in these 14 countries, which is the source of ultimate pride. I can now actually die peacefully, although I'm aiming to reach 50% of the world's countries within the next 10 years, because then I know it'll just tumble over and take care of itself, whether I'm here or not. And the one thing I just want to mention here is England, Scotland, and Wales, despite it being an incredibly undeveloped country, or 3 undeveloped countries in one. Why do I say that? Because they have never given the proper importance and attention to the early years, to learning in nurseries and receptions. But nonetheless, on a local level, we have teachers grabbing this. 92% of reception classrooms across Greater Manchester are teaching the programme. 100% in Hounslow classrooms on all 3 levels. 86% in Glasgow, one of the most violent cities in Europe. And here's an interesting fact. Who is paying for the 4-year-olds across Greater Manchester to learn this programme? Not the Education Ministry, because they don't think it's important. The National Health Service is paying. And after 4 months, they saw and heard from teachers about miraculous transformations, which are not at all miraculous, they're just neuroscience, easy. And they said, we now have to give this to our 3-year-olds. This has to go into the nurseries. Who's paying for the 3-year-olds in Greater Manchester to learn Think Equal? The police, of course. Imagine, they know that the first 5 years have everything to do with whether that child is going to grow up and fill our prisons, perpetrate a crime, and what have you, okay? So there that is. I'm going to really try impact and evidence. If anyone's really interested in this, I'm more than happy to send. I'll just, again, in the interests of having a more robust conversation, I'll zip through it. 3 very different countries. This is Botswana. Yale University conducted the RCT. We've done 3 randomized control trials, which are, as you know, the gold standard of evaluation. Children more socially and emotionally skilled as a result of Think Equal, less likely to be, so big reductions in anger, aggression, anxiety, withdrawal, and greater emotion regulation, greater social competence, things like sharing, etc. Then we have exactly the same result in Australia. I can't see, yes, this is Australia, I can see by the graphs. In Australia, how different is Australia to Botswana? Very different. Look at the results. Federation University and Yale University together, same results. And in Australia, they also proved that children with the highest deprivation, if you like, or with the lowest emotional and social intelligence when they started at baseline, by the end of the year, were impacted the most by the program. And then we have Colombia. Again, it's exactly the same results, which also proves, there's this received notion that you've got to contextualize for every country you're going into. That's old hat as far as I'm concerned. It's a nonsense. You contextualize for a country, what are you doing? You're underlining the stereotypes. If you really are contextualizing for this country or that, you better show the woman cooking the food in the kitchen, because that's what happens in that culture, right? That's what we're trying to work against. Children are more alike than they are unlike, wherever they are in the world, whatever religion, etc. So this proves it, because the same results all over. And in Colombia, we also learned that educators had showed increased empathy and increased mental well-being. Okay. Additional to those 3 randomized controlled trials we did, there are 6 decades of research. And the other thing that just, I have to say, after these 10 years now, drive me insane, is hearing again and again, well, we need data for this country. Yes, I know it works in that country, but will it work in this country? We're data-driven. We're data-led. Then read the data, my friends. Go into a library and get the books, because they've been there for 60 years. We know that social and emotional learning taught at quality in the early years leads after 25 years, after 40 years, after 60 years even, to 10 to 25% increases in adult income, 18% increase in learning outcomes, effects on crime, effects on violence, on unemployment. What more do we want? How can we have our leaders think a little longer term than 1 week? It kills me. I have to say, you can hear the frustration in my voice, I have no doubt. Okay, Think Equal in Ukraine. It's one of our countries at full saturation. The only thing I want to pick out here is a teacher described this program, which is any quality SEL program, by the way, right? A teacher described this program as an internal bulletproof vest for her children. Isn't that beautiful? A framework for peaceful coexistence that should work not only in times of crisis, but also in the country's recovery. And I mean, this feedback from teachers, and here's one from a parent, which again, I have to read. It's just, this is what sustains us, isn't it? Is knowing the difference that we're making. And then we can handle the 18-hour days. There's no issue. A mother of a 5-year-old boy in Dusamareb, Somalia, said, I wanted my son Ahmed to be strong. I thought strength meant being loud, never backing down. Think Equal taught him and me that true strength is empathy, controlling anger, solving problems. His teacher showed me his kindness chart. Now he helps his younger sisters without being asked. He mediates disputes in the street. And we've heard that a number of times from a number of instances of feedback. And this, to me, makes everything I've ever done worthwhile. This program is building a new generation of leaders, not with weapons, but with wisdom and respect. It's an investment in Somalia's true security. I think I am going to stop there. No, there's one more graph I just have to show you, and then I'm going to stop. But look at this. Just look at this. This is our latest evidence from last year in the UK, in Greater Manchester, where over 2,000 classrooms are now teaching the program. Look at the graphs on the right. The first one is emotion understanding. It's emotional literacy. The next one is perspective taking. A number of indicators, and there are a number of graphs. I'm just showing you two. The red line is children in this same school. So we're comparing like for like, but it's before COVID. It's the tests that happen annually in the UK on the developmental trajectory of children and the milestones being achieved. Before COVID, why? Because after COVID, we know that children's development stages have been all over the place, and in some cases, absolutely shattered. The red line represents how they normally, customarily develop in an ordinary setting on a year. The blue line was children from deprived and traumatized backgrounds, specially chosen as a comparison point. Children who were on pupil premiums, school meals. Look what happens at the end of 1 year of this program. The equality gap is eliminated. It's eliminated. In the second draft, it doesn't exist. They have totally caught up. And in the first graph, it's very nearly there. I rest my case. Oh, there are videos still. Can I send them to the group? Can I? Because
we will send the whole presentation.
Let's do that, please, because we must.
Including the videos.
And I'll just, whoops, sorry, I just need to tell you, Andy Burnham, who's now the Prime Minister of England, has made a video on Think Equal saying this is an amazing program. So please watch all this. I'll stop sharing now and let's talk.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you.
I think an element which stands out for me, so many things, but one in particular is we all have been taught stories about us, about others, and about the world. I think the intention is to change that story upside down, and it has to be changed from the very beginning rather than wait for it to again surface and then change it. So that unlearning and learning is just... So yeah, we have two options right now. One, we can ask questions right away, or I can put you in breakout rooms and we directly respond to the question, what echoes for me right now in those breakout rooms, so that you get a chance to speak to each other, because the wealth in this space is much more than only what Leslie has, and she has spoken wonderfully. But so both ways. So if you want a whole plenary, we can then continue as is, but otherwise we can go into breakout rooms and share what has echoed within and what your context demonstrates. And then we come back in the last 5 minutes. Sorry, Pat. Sorry to hear that.
But I have to rush. I do apologize. Thank you so much, Leslie. I have to go, but I'll catch up.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
I'll then place everyone in a breakout room. I think the opportunity okay, so there is a vote on a whole group. I'm happy it's a smaller group now. We can do, but I don't want anyone to miss out on the conversation. So if we can, then let's bring it up, that conversation here. Perfect. So I'm hearing whole group, please, as well. So that's fine.
Great. Will
So
you?
let's take this as a group, and yeah, let's ask the questions which have come up
Yes.
while you were listening.
Hi, if I could just jump in.
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay, for coordinating this, and Leslie for the presentation. So my name is DG. I work with a foundation called JBJ. It's a US-based foundation doing health and education development work in Malawi. A lot of what we do is kind of benefit cost analysis of various interventions. And I think my question, something that came up for me is, as we're looking through the various education interventions specifically, we seem to find a lot more data on kind of academic centered interventions, for example, tablet-based education, and very little on SEL. But based on what you're saying, it seems to be that there is this data out there. It's just not maybe focused on. So I guess I wanted your sense of why there's such an underemphasis on SEL when it seems to be as important, if not even more important in some ways than a kind of purely academic centered education program.
Thank you for that question, DG. It's one of the things that confound me the most. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times a day I go, how can they not get this? For example, the Gates Foundation, and we are a family here, right? I'm allowed to talk openly. This is kind of, what do you call it? What rules? Chatham House rules. It's important for us to understand this. Bill Gates himself said, and I quote him often, the first 5 years have everything to do with how the next 80 turn out. But his team, who could light up for so little money the entire world to get this critical learning, are not interested in social emotional learning. They literally say, we don't do early childhood. We don't do social emotional learning. It drives me crazy because, you cannot get a child who doesn't know how to learn, who can't focus, who is upset, angry, has temper tantrums, disturbs the whole class. I mean, anyone of any intelligence can understand. You see it, DG. We see it on this group. Why don't they see it? It's so obvious. If you have temper tantrums going on in a classroom without giving that child the tool to deal with them, because it's not a bad child who needs to be excluded from the classroom or needs to be punished. That is a child who's trying to communicate something, a need that they have, low self-esteem or trauma at home or whatever it is. That's communication, that behavior. And if we don't deal with that, how can a teacher possibly stand a chance of teaching what they need to teach for all those academic subjects that everybody is so interested in? And directly to your question about the data, it's all out there. I can give anyone who's interested, if I printed it out, it would be that thick. We have a summary of all of the evaluations over the past 60 years, proving that SEL even impacts academic subjects. If somebody is only interested in that misguidedly, even then they should be doing social emotional learning because it impacts that. I have no idea why, and I have no idea, DG, why also they only think in like 5-year stints. Why do ministries, governments not think preventatively? If I were the Chancellor of the Exchequer or a finance minister, the first thing I would think is, look, we have a major problem with overcrowded prisons in England. It's all over the news every single day. They're letting out murderers, rapists, because they have no room for them. They're coming in at such a rate, literally letting them out, and they go out and reoffend. And then you have parents saying, my daughter was killed because you let that person out. I mean, honestly, nobody is thinking of preventing. The way to not have to keep building prisons is to prevent.
Yeah, Leslie, I think there's this more to it also, where I think the question around how this ecosystem, how us all, do we also have any collective voice? I feel that voice is also missing, that collective voice. We have individual voices. We come sometimes here together, but when we go back, we go individually, right? I think that collective voice. So please, if you can also share one of the, the RCTs results, and we'll share it with the takeaway email. I think that will be really helpful. We have
Yes.
two more questions or observations here. Nazia has shared that what was being considered while measuring empathy, as you showed different study findings with a significant improvement. So how do you even measure empathy?
I'll give you one example. You show a child the picture of another child who has fallen, is clutching their knee and is crying. And you ask that child questions about the picture. Now, you might have at the baseline, at the beginning of the year, and you ask it at 2 points in time, once before the program and once after the program. And you will find the pattern is that at the beginning of the year, the child, and by the way, you also have a control group so that you can prove that it's not just natural development of a child growing over a year, it's the program is the difference between your two cohorts. And at the beginning of the year, the child might say, she's crying. By the end of the year, the child will say, she's crying because she's hurt herself. Can you see she's got a sore on her? And the child will talk. I mean, I've seen this with my own eyes, right? There are a myriad ways to test empathy, perspective taking. Can the child see the point of view of somebody else? It's easy. You just, and by the way, if anybody wants to see our set of questions, how we test, I'm more than happy to share. Ajay, what you have said is so important. And Goal 17, partnership for the goals. We have to partner in all of this work. I mean, we all have different,
And I think we can start right away as well. I would write you an email with asking a few things which we can start sharing right away as prompts and then email address, right? I'm launching a poll as well because I know some people have to leave 5 minutes earlier, but we don't want to miss out on your feedback. But let's continue the conversation while the poll is on your screen. These are simple questions, but very, very helpful for us as we continue. There's another question, and I think, Shamke, yours is a comment, but if you want to come in and share, more than welcome. Otherwise, I'll take another question. How does scale up look like under SEL in education system? The whole school approach is very important, but how do you often sustain this? And there's many funding constraints. We haven't really talked about funding, right? Yeah. This magic of 40 countries speaking to presidents, government. Is it Leslie in particular which is driving it? Has there been sustained funding which has figured it out somehow?
Okay, you ask, is it me who's driving the funding? So far, yes. I have to be honest and say, yes. There is something about the degree of conviction in a human being going to funders and saying, look, this is so important, that makes it stand out. And the one thing that I have to declare I have been so lucky and privileged in is one human being heard my plea for support and has given us all of his money. I mean, literally has said, I agree with you. I believe it's only mindset change that can make a difference in this world. And I am going to give you, which has helped us establish an $80 million multiplier fund. Now, that's pretty significant, okay? But it only happened fairly recently. For 8 years, I had to go from one to the next, But I did find individuals who would fund an entire country. An amazing man called David Suddens who said, I'll fund Gambia. I mean, actually, he didn't. He said, if I give you $100,000, where would you spend it? And I went, I want to do Gambia because we have buy-in from the ministry and I know it'll be sustainable. And okay, he says, how far will 100,000 get us? I said, well, it'll get us this many classrooms. But you know what, David? If you fund 400,000, you can do the entire country. And he said, okay, I'll do it. So there have been, but what is it? What makes that? Now, we now have brilliant, wonderful team members. Marie-France, I think, is actually on here, or maybe she's had to go back and work, but Marie-France has just been hired as a maternity cover in our business development department, an amazing young woman called Sana. Shout out to them. And they are going to come with funding. They're going to do it because it can't only be me. We need a succession plan to me, right? But I do know the lesson to be learned is confidence breeds confidence. Now, false confidence doesn't help anybody because it can be smelled out a million miles. But if you really are confident, because you've seen it with your own eyes, because you know that this is the case, it moves mountains. So what does this funding do? The 80 million multiplier fund enables us to go to the ministry and say, what can you give us in kind towards 50% of the costs? Because we'll bring you 50%. Any country that will embed this at full saturation in their curriculum framework will bring 50% of the cost of this program for every child across the country. And then we have to find the other 50%. So that's either the GPE multiplier, or it is World Bank, or World Bank is funding us in 2 countries now. There are ways, and I know it's easy for me to say that, isn't it? Because this is such a bad time for funding. But it's doable.
Maybe I think that's something which we can extrapolate more when we are thinking about the blog also, right? Like, how do we position what has been the learnings around it? I know there's a raise of hand, Shamke. Just give me a second on that. And we have 6 minutes, so we'll optimize that as well. There are 2 more questions as well. So what I'll do is we'll combine all 3 and then Leslie hear from you. Maybe that'll be, optimal around it. So there's one question from Sirinadi, and that's around, how do you, when they're transitioning to primary years and you're supporting teachers, how do we ensure that these conversations or these reflections, which are very powerful, how do they sustain these competencies, continue with children in the primary years? So that's one question. There's a second question on, again, there's a great example you shared on empathy, but from a perspective of evaluation and outcome and output to literacy, numeracy, is there a linkage which is possible to draw? Have you drawn that in terms of output, outcomes, and impact qualitatively, beyond qualitatively, a bit quantitatively as well? I know all of these conversations will be completely incomplete, but maybe you can share a bit of wisdom. But pausing there, sorry, asking for more, given in the interest of time. Shamki, if you can come in, share yours as well, and then we'll conclude with Leslie sharing her final thoughts.
I could go on for hours, I'm enjoying this so much. Go on, Shamki.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and also the insight that you're putting in here. My name is Sharon Amke, and as I've said in the comment, I work with Uthabiti Africa. So Uthabiti Africa in Kenya has been very, very upfront when it comes to doing the policies with the national government, partnering, of course, with other people. So just recently, we concluded the conversation on now launching the whole policy, which will be coming by, and also at the end of maybe this month or next month. Now there is when now we are moving into the implementation of the policy through the training, through the expertise that we have. And just recently, early this week, we also had a conversation with the Uganda government, of which they are very, very helpful in terms of moving us from one place to another, because they have recently finalized and also launched their policy. Now they brought us in. Now we are going to do the concept notes on how we are going to do the implementation of the same. So I think now moving on from early childhood and then transitioning to the early primary, it is now going to be embedded very well, since the same people working with this expertise, moving from them now to the next level. I think that's a very, very right and great opportunity, also conversations to have. And I'll be really, really be glad when we are adding this group that we join from our end, so that we can also share much and also learn much from each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say it's really important for you and I to talk, because we are this week signing an MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, with the Council of Governors of Kenya, because, you know, according to the constitution, early childhood's been devolved for implementation to the counties. We must talk. I've got, you know, my email address is up at the top when we all put them down, or else
We'll
ask.
share the email address in the takeaway email as well.
Let's have a conversation, Sharon. That's important. Super. Okay. Then, so the two other questions. The first was about the transitioning to primary school and how to sustain it. So we do have a level 3, which I have to tell you isn't as well used or called for as levels 1 and 2. We have some countries where we have all 3 levels. Gambia is one. David Sutton's paid for every child in the Gambia on level 1. The World Bank then came and said, wow, this program is really effective. We're going to fund the next 2 levels. And that's what's happening right now. Moldova doing all 3 levels. There are certain countries. But level 3 is there. So the thing is, we will only fund 1 level because we know that 1 year of this program does the trick. So we'd rather go to new countries and reach more children than go deep in one country. Because the critical thing is to lay the foundation. And, you know, once that's done, the child is safe in society from both ways, you know. And so I would say, yes, it is very important. But we are also finding a whole school approach kind of takes care of itself to some degree, because teachers are now posting the mood meter, the kindness card. They're posting it all over the school. They're making copies of it, and it's going. And children are teaching children in different grades. We are seeing this all the time. We've in fact had to put a question about that now into our observation surveys, which the leaders of the school do. And we also, of course, have ministry officials doing checking MEL, because it's a factor. We see it happening, and we want to know to what extent, and we want to know to what extent is it actually improving the outcomes in the children, which is what we're ultimately interested in. The linkage to numeracy literacy, we haven't done that yet, but now we are going to do that. And I'm definitely going to do it in Greater Manchester. We've had children now learning Think Equal for 2 years. I want to go into grade 1 and grade 2 and see the children who did Think Equal versus the children who didn't. What are the differences in their standards of literacy and numeracy, and can we make any extrapolate meaning from that? And then finally, Sharon, yeah, the implementation of SEL is definitely something that both the Ministry of Education and the COG understand in Kenya is critical. And I'm hugely optimistic. We have a meeting coming up on the 18th of the LREB counties. We aim to, and the COG want us to go to every one of the 47 counties. We were already into Mandera and Wajir and Mandera. And yeah, we look forward, and I look forward to speaking to you further about Kenya.
Thank you so much. Before we let you go, let's convert the drought into a spring. There's a Zoom drought, which everything looks black, but behind this, there's so wonderful pictures and faces. So if we can, we'll count from 3 to 1 and we come together. That'll be really amazing so that we know who is there. Great. So 3, 2, 1.5, 1/2, quarter, and almost there and going ahead. So 1, 2, 3. One more. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Leslie, for joining in. Thank you, everyone, for pushing for a plenary. I think the plenary was really great. And I think the questions and conversations, it basically says that these 90 minutes are not enough. And of course, what we are trying to do, 90 hours also not enough. So let's continue. We'll send an email with takeaways. We'll send an email with the presentation. If you want something else from Leslie and reach out, please reach out. She has a whole team. And I think we need a larger team than all of us to do it. So if you want GSF to do something, please reach out, ask us so that we can take it ahead, and then we'll try to do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us.
and for GSF.
Thanks, everyone.
conversation. Honestly, well done, Ajay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.